Good evening. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for January the 8th, 2019. We welcome those that are in attendance this evening as we prepare to do our work. It's a Planning Commission for the City of Germantown. Before we get started, I'd just like to welcome Richard Marsh as a new member of the Planning Commission, a lifelong Germantown resident and a career banker here in the region. We welcome you to our commission and our group, and we look forward to working with you during the year.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. In the first meeting of the year, it is protocol to elect officers. We do have a quorum. Actually, we have full attendance this evening. And also we've got on our agenda a motion to adopt our revised agenda. The Planning Commission meets in executive session at 5:30 and goes over each item on the agenda. And at that time, staff brought forth some revised agenda items. Is there a motion by the Commission to approve the revised agenda as brought forward by staff?
Motion to approve. Second.
Is there a motion and a second? Any questions or discussion? Please call the roll.
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Alderman Owen?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Calzada?
Yes. The agenda has been set and revised. Brings us to item 4 on the agenda, election of officers. Is there a motion from the Commission for a nomination for chair for 2019?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Mr. Mike Harless for chairman for the Planning Commission 2019.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon. There's a motion and a second. Are there any other nominations from the floor? Seeing or hearing of none others, nomination process is closed. Let's have a roll call vote for chairman, or potentially for Chairman Mike Harless.
Mr. Biden?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Calzada?
Yes. Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. I'm not sure how it went so quickly. That's frightening.
Well, it's a sign of great work over the years. And in a moment, I'm going to turn this meeting over to you. Also, as a matter of order, the Planning Commission has a vice chairman and secretary as well. Is there a motion from the floor to nominate a vice chairman for the Planning Commission for 2019?
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Dyke Bacon.
Thank you. Is there a second? There's a motion and a second by Mr. Hernandez. Any other nominations from the floor for vice chairman? Seeing no names come forward, nomination process is closed. Please call the roll.
Mr. Biden? Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Sanders?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Calzada?
Yes. Congratulations, Vice Chair Bacon. We look forward to serving with you this year. Is there a nomination for Secretary of the Planning Commission to serve for 2019? The floor is open for nominations.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to nominate Mr. George Hernandez.
There's a motion for a nomination for George Hernandez for Secretary. Is there a second?
Second.
It's a second by Commissioner Clark. Are there any other nominations from the floor at this time? Seeing, hearing none others, nominations are closed for Secretary. Please call the roll.
Mr. Biden?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Calzada?
Yes, that concludes the election of officers for the Planning Commission for 2019. And since I only do this once a year, I'm always rusty. And so I'm glad to turn this meeting over to you, Mr. Chairman. You've run it so smoothly for many, many years. You have the gavel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd like to say you also ran a very smooth meeting. I applaud you. We could have used you a couple of months ago. Our next item on the agenda is a approval of the December minutes. You need the roll call. If you would call the roll, please.
Correction to the minutes.
Do you want the roll called first? Yes. Okay. We're calling the roll for attendance. I'm sorry.
Mr. Baggett. Here. Mr. Saunders.
Here.
Ms. Hicks.
Here.
Mr. Marsh.
Here.
Mr. Hernandez.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Here.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Chairman Harris.
Here.
Mayor Council.
Here.
And we have a quorum for the meeting tonight. Now we will move to the approval of the December minutes. Do we have a motion? Motion approved. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any additions or subtractions or modifications to the minutes?
We do.
Mrs. Hicks.
Thank you. I was not at the November meeting. However, at the December meeting, we approved minutes for November and October. When I attempted to correct something, I misspoke. So I would like to change the minutes of the December meeting for when we voted on the November minutes to reflect abstain, and when we voted on the October minutes at the December meeting to approve. Ms. Rush, good? Thank you.
Good. With those modifications, do we have approval from the commission? Any other additions, subtractions, modifications? If not, please call the roll.
Mr. Baggett. Yes. Ms. Hicks. Yes. Mr. Saunders.
Yes.
Mr. Hernandez.
Yes.
Mr. Marsh.
Abstain.
Mr. Clark.
Yes.
Alderman Owens.
Yes.
Chairman Harris.
Yes.
Mayor Council.
Abstain.
And the minutes for December are approved with the modifications so noted. We now move to the public hearing, and our first case number is with Houston High School and Mrs. Gorowski. I believe you're going to be making the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Harless. So the first item before you today is for Houston High School. It is for an approval of a phasing plan, a 4-phase phasing plan for future building modifications and additions, and then approval of the first 2 phases of that plan, a revised final site plan. And the first 2 phases will be the field house and the concession stand. So Houston High is located here on Wolf River Boulevard in the R residential zoning district. And this is the site plan layout. Here you can see the football field, and up here is the high school. As mentioned, this is a 4-phase phasing plan. The first phase is for the athletic field house, which is here. What is now being called phase 2 is the concession stand, the paddock. Over here is the band, expansion of the band room, and this is the expansion of the performing arts facility. So as mentioned, this approval right now is for the first 2 phases. Right here would be the athletic house, and here would be the concession stand. It's a little bit grainy to see here, but again, the athletic field house, which would be 12,480 square feet. And then this is the current band building, which will be renovated to be the concession stand, 3,200 square feet. In the staff report that you had received at the subcommittee, it had initially said that this would be phase 4 once they had renovated the existing band room and they expanded it, then this current band room would become the paddock. The applicant is asked to switch that around and to get approval now because the representative, Fleming Architects, is contracted for both of these projects. So they would like to get approval for both of these projects at this time, for both the field house and the concession stand. The construction would begin in spring 2019, and all 4 phases would commence by the end of 2020. Also, in the Planning Commission Subcommittee, there was some discussion of extending the sidewalk along here further. It's not shown on this plan to extend it further into Houston Levy Park, but we will speak with the applicant about that and have that be a condition of approval that be addressed, the expansion of the sidewalk continuing further to connect to the existing city park. Following the Planning Commission's consideration of this project, you'll see here the field house elevation, and then this is what we'll look at here. Following the Planning Commission's consideration of the project will then move to the Design Review Commission, where details such as the building elevations and the landscaping will then be analyzed in further detail. This would be the concession stand, and here's a conceptual rendering of the concession stand. And as mentioned, these details then will be looked at the Design Review Commission, which will be the next step. When the applicant would like to move forward with the other phases of the project, those specific details would have to come back to the Planning Commission for a revised final site plan and then the Design Review Commission. So, and this just gives you a little more detail of some of the landscaping here. Again, this will be analyzed in more detail at the Design Review Commission, but just to show you how some of this area will be reconfigured to be more pedestrian friendly and a more inviting access to the athletic field. So this concludes staff's report. Both the applicant and the applicant's representative are here for questions.
Do we have questions of staff before we hear from the applicant?
Sir, what was the schedule?
The schedule is for this here, for the athletic field house, that's the first phase. They would like to start that in the spring. And I'm not quite sure how the actual phasing will play out, or construction will play out for this, but they want to have all 4 phases done by the end of 2020.
Other questions? If not, would the applicant like to make a presentation? Please come forward. And if you'll state your name and address for the record, please.
Steve Landwehr, Fleming Architects, 5101 Wheelus Drive, Memphis, Tennessee, 38117. And I think Sarah did a great job of presenting what we're bringing before you tonight. I can relate that some of the other requests from the Planning Commission are still in the works. We're working on the easement plan that you've requested, just due to the timing of our application and the request for the easement plan. We've been told that that will probably be completed by the end of this week, and we will put that in front of staff as soon as we get that. I think I heard mention about an extension of a sidewalk, and that was not in the staff report, but I believe that that was mentioned to possibly Superintendent Manuel or maybe Josh Cathy.
To the superintendent in the subcommittee meeting.
If I could get some clarification on what the Planning Commission is looking for.
I think staff can provide that. They've got a full understanding of it. Sarah, is that correct?
Yeah, we can speak about the meeting about it, but it's to extend the sidewalk further beyond the football field here to connect to Houston Levy Park. Commissioner Hicks, would you like to elaborate a little bit on it?
We had a short conversation about it at that public meeting. It's the sidewalk extending it past the curb cut, I think is for the ambulance. That is for the ambulance, isn't it, that curb cut? Right now, the sidewalk goes south to that curb cut, and my comment was to bring it farther around to the south to where that street meets the street into the park, so that kids who park back by the tennis courts and walk up to school, when they cross those 2 lanes of traffic in the mornings, they can get up on a sidewalk and finish their walk to school.
Okay, so it's not to take the sidewalk further south into the park itself. It's just to take it basically to the intersection of the road that runs east-west and north-south. Is that correct? Okay.
Correct. And Sarah, I think, has an understanding of if you need it, because I know we're just talking, but she can actually draw it and show it,
Okay.
right?
If I can speak with staff on that, and then I can bring that before GMSD.
Mr. Landwehr, question. You're moving phase 4 up to phase 2.
A little bit of misunderstanding there. What we have been contracted to do is everything construction document-wise on the west end of the property. So it's easy for us to do a boundary, or not boundary, but a topographic survey of this general area and to go ahead and design these two components, which will be complementary of each other. We still do have the logistical issue of finding a place for all the band equipment that currently resides in that metal building. Now, if we can find a place for that in the short term, that part of the project can move forward if, again, if they can find a place for the instruments and if funding is available. It kind of is still phase 4, but if we can move it up, we certainly will move it up. But the general idea was that we would design everything on this west end in one fell swoop and then deal with everything on the east end later. So,
Commissioners, questions?
But it's contemplated that these two buildings on the west side would be in a concurrent phase. They'd be built at the same time.
not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
We were contracted to design both of them at the same time because of
Design.
their location.
Right.
It may still be that is still phase 4. Logistically, it's something we'll have to work out with GMSD.
Mr. Chairman, are we just approving the general phasing, or are we looking at these having to be actually 1, 2, 3, 4 as it goes along? It appears to me that phasing would be really based on what they can really do with their either funds or with being able to move equipment around. So, if we approve 1 and 2 here and it really turns out to be 4, do they have to come back to us?
Well, I think if we approve 1 and 2 and then they decide to go 1 and 3, they're going to have to come back to us for 3. And that's understood, right?
That's understood. We will certainly come back for phase 3, which is the addition of the band room, which is on the east side. Phase 4, are you getting me confused? Phase 1 is the field house. Phase 2 is the band room. Phase 3 is the either renovation or addition to the auditorium, and phase 4 is the concession stand.
Mr. Ross, do you have a comment?
Just for clarification, based on the ordinance, there is no requirement to go in numerical order of the phases. It does make it a little awkward to start with phase 1, move to phase 4, and then come back to 3 and then 2, but that is certainly how they can do it if they'd like to. The other thing that Ms. Pounder was mentioning is that when they come back with phase 3 and phase 4 for final plans, they can redo the order of those phases and clear it up at that point.
Good point.
Based on the way that Mrs. Landwehr mentioned, they are contracted to design, this makes relative sense.
Well, I think your comment's correct, so,
That sounds appropriate to me. I have no problem.
good. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Ms. Landwehr, anything else?
Nothing for me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioners, questions, comments?
With regards to that water that pools between is there anything being done? Is that drain work?
We will have our civil engineer look at that drain to see if it's appropriately sized. I believe when we spoke after the kind of non-public meeting that we had.
The 3 of us?
We had a public meeting and nobody showed.
Thank you.
The area that Ms. Hicks is speaking about is just to the south of the existing current band room storage, kind of in that triangular space that you see up on the screen. There's water apparently that is ponding there. I've not witnessed it myself, but I will have my civil engineer look at that. As it stands, there will be some grading around that existing band room because if you look at the foundation, it sits on the west side about a foot and a half off grade. At the east end of that building, it is actually level with the asphalt that runs around the running track of the stadium. So we will be grading there, and we will be looking to improve that if the civil engineer finds that there is an issue.
Thank you.
It may be that it is ponding because there are low spots and that the water is not making it to the drain. There is actually a drain in that general area.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other comments, commissioners? If not, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this project? Please come forward. Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Please come forward. Seeing none. Commissioners, any further questions, comments? We'll call for a vote. I would need a motion first. Mr. Bacon.
Mr. Chairman, the subcommittee met on December 19th, 2018, and recommended that the application be placed on the next Planning Commission agenda for action, subject to the subcommittee discussion, comments in the staff report, and the plans and documents filed with the application, as well as pending that the applicant hold a neighborhood meeting. The applicant has complied. Tonight's proposed motion is approval of a phasing plan for future building modifications and additions, and approval of a revised final site plan to allow for a new accessory building and a renovated accessory field house Phase 1 and concession stand Phase 2 at Houston High School, 9755 Wolf River Boulevard, subject to the comments and conditions listed above and the plans and documents submitted with the application.
Do we have to modify that motion since it said Phase 2 was the band? No, we're okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Mr. Chairman, I'm voting to approve. This is a very exciting addition to Houston High School, and I think it'll have a lot of impact to the sports facilities in the back.
Mr. Clark?
I'm voting yes as well.
Mr. Hernandez?
Voting yes.
Ms. Hicks?
Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Voting yes, I'd like to echo the comments that Mr. Bacon made. I do think that this brings Houston High School and pretty much in vogue of what's going on in sports, and I think it'll be a great addition to our school, so definitely yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Chairman Harms?
And I vote yes also, and the project is approved. You now go to design. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Mayor Razzle?
Yes.
Mayor, I'm sorry. Now, it is approved. The next step, I believe, is for the design review. And as you get into further of the projects, you will probably, if it's further down the road, may need to have another meeting with the neighbors just to keep them in the loop, because it's important for the community. And, well, yeah, I think so. It's tough on the 28th on a Friday at 6 o'clock, you know, but I appreciate you guys making the effort. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next project on the agenda, Mrs. Gorowski, you're on again, I believe.
Thank you, Chairman Harless. The next item before you is a text amendment to the city's Parkland dedication ordinance. This is a text cleanup amendment. The specific section to the ordinance is 17-60. It is part of the subdivision regulations. The Parkland dedication ordinance has been on the books since 1986. It is a requirement of new subdivisions that they either dedicate parkland as part of their development. If they are unable to, or the city cannot find a feasible solution to dedicate parkland, then they pay a fee, a payment in lieu of dedication fee. So, as mentioned, since this ordinance was originally adopted in 1986, we have had some changes to our zoning in the city of Germantown. We have additional districts that allow for residential housing. Specifically, we have the RH, retirement housing zone, and we have our different smart code zones, which also allow for housing. The original amendment in 1986 did not list those zoning districts. So one of the changes is to also include those zoning districts, that new residential projects in those zoning districts also either dedicate parkland or pay the fee payment in lieu of. The next change is regarding how plans are reviewed. In the city of Germantown, whenever a project comes forward, there is a departmental review, the Technical Advisory Committee. And the Parks Director is one of the people that gets plans and reviews them and comments on them. New development plans do not go before the Parks and Recreation Commission. So this is a cleanup to properly define how our process has been working here in Germantown. The Parks Director is the one that reviews the plans and then relays that to the Parks Commission. The third revision is cleaning up at the bottom down here. It is cleaning up the language where it talks about parks districts. The city of Germantown does not have specific parks districts. I talked with the parks director and we reviewed the parks master plan and previous parks plans for the city of Germantown. Parks are determined on a citywide basis. There are neighborhood parks, and then there are also comprehensive park complexes such as Germantown, and those parks are available to all citizens, and they are not in, all residents rather of Germantown, they are not in specific parks districts. So that's taking out language that does not properly reflect our city. In executive session, we added one more change, which is here. We're taking out this last sentence. One of the changes up here is that related to how the funds were spent. As we mentioned, we're taking out the language of parks districts, and it also said that the funds be used within 12 months. That is not feasible and often with coming up with new parkland, and so then this bottom part here refers back to this specific time period, and that is being removed as well. That concludes staff's report. After this, should the Planning Commission approve this, this will move forward to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen for 3 readings, which would include a public hearing.
Thank you. Do we have questions of staff? Seeing none, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this project? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in opposition to this project? Seeing none, hearing none. Commissioners, any comments? If not, Mr. Bacon, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, the subcommittee met on December 19th, 2018, and recommended that this item be considered at the regular Planning Commission meeting on January 8th, 2019, pending a review of the proposed ordinance amendment by the city attorney. This has been completed. Tonight's proposed motion is to approve the amendments to the Parkland dedication, Section 17-60 ordinance, subject to the Commission's discussion, staff comments, and conditions in the staff report and documents filed with the application.
Have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Bacon?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to compliment staff and in particular Ms. Garalewski for a tremendous amount of time and effort wading through this and parsing the language and working with the city attorney to get this correct. This has been an incredibly diligent exercise. So excellent work, and I'm voting in favor.
Mr. Clark?
I too will be voting yes as well. Just mentioned in the executive session, we talked a little bit about the 12-month period. Just on the record that it's used in a reasonable amount of time and used for parklands like we discussed in there. So I'm voting yes.
Mr. Hernandez?
Yes.
Ms. Higgs?
I too want to second what Mr. Bacon said, that this has been, must have been a challenge to keep up with all the red marks and the ins and the outs. So thank you for all your work on this. Yes.
Mr. Marsh?
Yes.
Alderman Owens?
Yes.
Mr. Saunders?
Yes.
Chairman Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Panslow?
Yes.
And with that, the project is approved, and Mr. Ross, you and your staff did an excellent job on this. Congratulations. With that, is there anything else to come before the commission tonight? We stand adjourned. Thank you.